Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome Parker Williams to the podcast, and he is the CEO of Tradiant. Welcome to the pod, Parker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Super happy to be here, and I'm a big supporter of what you do. So
look, I super appreciate it, and we just discovered off air that we grew up in very close regionally to each other. You grew up in San Diego. I grew up in Riverside, which is about 40 minutes away from San Diego. So both SoCal boys. You now no longer live in SoCal. I haven't lived in SoCal since I was in my early 20s, so a long time ago. And you're now based in the great state of Colorado, aren't you?
That's right. And I don't have the luxury that you do being there in is it Puebla?
Puebla, Mexico. Puebla City. Yep, that's right.
Puebla. Because you know what? You're getting all the nice weather. You're still getting that same climate. And I'm over here. My skin is cracked. My lips are chapped. It's not been fun. So,
did you have to, when I first moved to New Zealand, because New Zealand is a cold, wet country, and when I first moved to New Zealand from Southern California, I did not have the appropriate wardrobe for New Zealand, like at all. I did not have enough jackets. I did not have thermals. I did not have, I felt like I needed to buy an entirely new wardrobe when I arrived in New Zealand because I was dressed very inappropriately when I arrived.
I can't relate to you more. I actually moved here with a backpack. I almost had nothing. So I relied on solely hand-me-downs and just whatever else. There's some family out here. So when I moved, took advantage as much as I could. Because, I come out here and it's not tank tops anymore. So
no, that's right. And I now have gone back the other direction, and I basically live in shorts and a T-shirt now. So, it's 25C today. It was sunshiny, white puffy clouds, blue sky. Here we are, so my birthday's Halloween. So we got 1 week to go, and it's my birthday. And normally by Halloween, it is pretty cold and miserable. Even in Southern California, that's one of the coldest times of the year is around Halloween. A bit windy, can get a bit cold, can even rain sometimes. And no, it's very similar to San Diego in terms of weather. It just doesn't get miserable here, which I love.
If you've got any clothes from the New Zealand days, just ship them over here. I'll make sure to put them in good use.
How long have you been in Boulder?
I've been in Boulder for going on 6 years now. So I've been here for 5 years and some change.
I love it. So you're almost a local now because you look 12. So the reality is you must have been there for half your lifetime.
Yeah, seriously. You're pretty much right. But what's funny is like Boulder has a vibe out here. And it's very, I don't want to say like hippie, but it's very about nature. Everybody's just super organic and it's very different than San Diego. You know?
Yes.
And I haven't totally taken on the aesthetic of Boulder yet. I'm sitting here with my collared shirts and
you're definitely not looking hippie. You're looking more like you're in the business grind mode. You look like you're in founder mode. That's what I'm looking at here. I see the whiteboard behind you there. I see lots of stuff written on it. So clearly lots of planning, lots of thinking happening here. You're clearly in an office space here. So, you're in the middle of a business grind.
Yeah, man, we're early too. Actually, I'm the CEO, but I also founded this company. I do have another co-founder, but it's a newer business. We started about 6 months ago, and it's just been pedal to the metal. We've been grinding and just trying to get after it, and it's specifically that I could tell you. It's been a lot.
Love it. I love it. This is not your first rodeo. You've been a director before. You've worked in some pretty senior positions in your career. And I was actually being complimentary when I said you look like you're 12 because you got a baby face, you got a young face, so you're very fortunate. You're very fortunate to look as young as you look. But your career wouldn't allude to that youth because you've held some pretty serious, heavy hitting positions all the way from sales roles, directorship, leadership roles, founder roles. You also were the founder of Fight Never Flight, which you also still run. And first of all, tell us what Tradiant is. How did it come to be? Like, why did you feel like I got to do this? Because when I look back across your history, I wouldn't automatically go, oh, he's going to found something like Tradiant. That's not where I would have gone if somebody put a gun to my head and said, what do you think this guy's going to do next? It wouldn't have been something like Tradiant. So first of all, tell us what Tradiant is. Tell us how it came to be. And then tell us like what led you here.
Yeah, I love it. So what Tradiant does is, so we are a distributor, and to be specific, a closeout distributor. So what we're doing is we're helping different brands and manufacturers move some of their excess product or surplus product in general. And that can mean so many different things, right? Whether it's a canceled order or they've got a rebrand on the way and they need to move some of this product and flush it out, or overrun, and you name it, right? So we essentially work very closely with those vendors, and we find out what the restrictions are. What are you looking to do? What kind of price point do you want to get? And how can we best serve the vendor? And then in turn, we take that product out into the marketplace. And to be specific, it's the secondary marketplace. So you've got like your premium retailers, and we all know them: Target, Costco, Walmart, you name it. We avoid that because that's a big no-no, right? In the eyes of a vendor, you're obviously not going to take that product and then sell it for a discount to those guys, right? So you really need to identify where at in that marketplace that this product can go, where it's going to be less disruptive, depending on what the restrictions look like, um, and that's in short terms. That's what Tradiant does. So we're filling that gap and really trying to get money back into the hands of the customer. And then we're also trying to solve some really big problems. One of the things is when you look at how much waste is out into the world, it's actually mind blowing once you enter this space, how much of that product is simply just thrown away. It's millions and millions of units and SKUs of product that's just being wasted. And, seeing that, I'm actually quite passionate about addressing that. And then also putting premium product, nationally recognized product, and getting that into the hands of certain communities that might not be able to afford it otherwise. It doesn't seem like much, but when you have, we'll take any product out in the world and then give access to some demographic that generally can't shop at a Walmart or even a Costco, they don't have that luxury. And they go to a dollar store and now they can. And it's the same product that they've just been wanting or their kids want or whatever the case may be. That's something that I'm super passionate about. And I think that this is one way to really address that problem. And luckily we found a way to fit within this space, address it. As far as how I got here, super interesting. So early in my career, before I started hitting the corporate life, I was actually training to try to get into the UFC. That was my whole thing. So from the time I was 16 until I was 20, 21, 22, I was training full time, trying to do mixed martial arts. And that was quite the experience, I got to tell you, because I went from a life where I'm just getting beat up all the time. I'm getting cauliflower eared and all of this. It's just, and then you meet people, and I had met a mentor, and he had mentioned to me that he had a very similar business model, but back in like early 90s. And this was for telecom equipment. So all the infrastructure that a corporate company needed inside of their floor of some corporate high rise, they were continuously buying that excess and then reselling it. And I heard that idea and I'm like, wow, this could be modernized. And I think that there's quite an opportunity here to focus on what seems to be a bigger marketplace, which is food and beverage, and really just look in your retail stores and see how much product is out there. It's mind blowing to me, where I was like, wow, you know what? There's probably a need for this. So I got to work, and I've been very fortunate in who I've been able to meet, and some of my current investors today who have mentored me through the whole process, and it's just expanded on itself from there. So yeah, that's the intro of how I got into this industry.
I love it. I love it. Now, one of the biggest challenges, nobody would say that formal distribution is an asset-light business, typically. So typically they buy the product, they warehouse the product, they sell the product, they ship the product, they get the money, then they go buy more. Are you operating on consignment of the goods as a distributor on consignment? Or are you actually buying the goods, owning the goods, warehousing the goods, finding buyers for the goods, and selling the goods for a margin of, typically in distribution, we see that 3% to 4% net margins are extremely common in the distribution business. So it's not what you consider a high margin. It's a high volume, but it's not a high margin business. That's how distributors typically make good money, is that they're moving a lot of product over a short or relatively short period of time in bulk lots. That's how distributors tend to make their money. And they oftentimes will have a dealer network. Sometimes they'll have a retail network that they're selling into. There's all sorts of channels that distributors will be selling into. Sometimes there's a master distributor that sells to sub-distributors that sell into the market. There's all sorts of different ways that distributors find routes to market. First of all, do you actually own the goods that you sell? That's the first thing. Second of all, in addition to just buying goods at a certain price, warehousing them, and then shipping them at a slightly higher price, are there other value-added services that you're trying to bring to market that make you unique, that make you distinct from competing distributors of these name brands who could, in theory, probably do something similar to you? They could have almost like a secondary set of partners that they sell to, the non-premium partners, for lack of a better term. If it's a Nike shoe, obviously we're going to try to sell to the Foot Lockers of the world first. We're going to try to sell to the premium shoe retailers first. But if I end up with 20 containers of shoes that are coming to the end of the season and I need to get rid of them, then obviously you have to get creative about which markets and sometimes even which regions you can sell into. So where do you see your unique value add in the constellation of distributors of the same types of products that you sell?
Great question. And to answer your first question, yeah, we do own the product. So we use 3PLs all across the United States, and that's where our product goes. Ideally, though, if I could take a product from where it is to where it's going, that's a huge win for me, right? If I don't have to pay for the storage fees and have to go through that whole mess, that's great. And which kind of goes to your follow-up question of what makes us different. And speed is one of the big advantages that we have, is we've been able to build out what I love to call the spider web, right? And when you look at the spider web, it's all of these buyers. Really, there's 27 key players in the secondary marketplace. And these 27 key players are like, the best way to think about it is these are the companies, the retailers that can take the right amount of volume and actually have the right amount of stores. It's like a Dollar Tree, right? They're just big enough. And a quick little story of what I have generally seen in this closeout space and how they typically operate. And then that'll kind of lead into what makes us different. Generally what happens, wholesalers, which is also another term for the closeout distributors. They're liquidators, they're wholesalers, so on and so forth. Wholesalers will generally come in and they offer 5 cents on the dollar, no matter what the product is. They're going to go in and try and cut your legs off as much as possible, right? And then say they go through with that deal and they get their 5 cents on the dollar. Nancy sells to the other wholesaler, who's Jim. And then Jim sells to the other wholesaler, who is Drew. And then Drew finally gets it and puts it into the retailer that it is supposed to be in. However, when Drew sells that product, he will actually skin maybe 10% of that inventory and warehouse it. Then what happens is the vendor's got these restrictions, right? Don't sell it to X, Y, and Z. Well, Drew takes that 10% and sells it specifically where the vendor had told them not to. And it creates all of this chaos into the marketplace. The buyers don't really know who really has the product. They've seen it. Everybody's shopping it out. It just becomes this chaos is really what it looks like. And that's something I noticed pretty early on. And I said, how can we differentiate from that? Speed being the first one. 2, we take their restrictions so serious. My number one question when talking to a vendor is, what kind of restrictions do you have on this product? Where can it go? Where can I place it to best serve you? And generally, they don't want to put it into these bigger chain, big box stores because they're going to market the crap out of it. And if they market the crap out of it and Walmart sees that one of these retailers is selling it for so significantly less, it creates a lot of conflict. So then that's where we have to get creative and say, okay, so where does this fit within that funnel? Really, when I say funnel, I think of it like this. At the top of the funnel, you've got your premium marketplace. And that's obviously your Costco's of the world. And that's Walmart, Target, you name it. Right under that is where we start to play in. And right under that, in that first tier, you're looking at Dollar Tree. You're looking at Burlington, TJ Maxx, off-price channels. Ross.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Below that, you've got Ollie's of the world, as an example. And then it just keeps going down, and it goes all the way down to the flea market level. And there's even creative places like the Amish and Mennonite communities who take product. Like, it's just mind blowing where it can go, right? But we've been able to expand on that network. And when we talk to a vendor and get those restrictions, when we look at our network, we could say, okay, we could specifically place it into these independent retailers where they're not going to market the product and cause all of this disruption. And maybe when we talk to them, they're like, yeah, put it wherever. And that's fine too, but we've got options. And I think that's super important. The other piece is we have this paper trail. So it really comes down to honesty and integrity. That's one of the most important pillars that we live by. It's one of our core pillars that we live by. And when we are talking to a vendor, we want to have full transparency and we don't want any shadiness, right? And we want you to feel comfortable about where your product is going, how it's going there, and the entire process, right? And then the final piece that I'll address is we aren't pigs about the deal. I'm not going to go in and say, hey, I'll give you 5 cents on the dollar. I'm going to truly try to bring back as much of value as possible back to the vendor, the customer. And I'm going to prioritize the relationship so I can be their partner moving forward and not just worry about this one deal. Those are just a few key details of what makes us different from the norm in the space.
Yeah, look, it's super interesting. And obviously, you guys, because I know you speak a lot about network on the website, and you talk a lot about, obviously, you've got suppliers and brands that are suppliers, and then you've got the network of potential buyers. And that network of potential buyers will have certain attributes associated with it that then put them into the buckets that the suppliers or the manufacturers will allow you to sell to or not sell to. So basically, you got to segment your sellers, products, and you got to segment your buyers and the products, not only that they want to buy, but what they can buy and what they're allowed to buy. You segment those all by their attributes that you assign to them in whatever system, probably in an ERP or whatever it's in. I guess in an ideal world for you, you would always have a buyer lined up by the time the seller is ready to sell the goods to you. So ideally, the deal is done. It's back to back, right? So instead of you, again, you don't want, it's almost like building a spec house, right? I would rather build a spec house for somebody that I've already got a buyer in mind for that spec house. Then it's not really a spec house anymore. It's more like a custom build where I'm building this house, and yes, it's a spec house, meaning if the person backs out by the time I got this house built, then yeah, I still got to sell the house. But the reality is I've got a highly likely buyer lined up on the end of this build once it's complete. They've been credit checked. They got the money. This is something that they're after. It's in the area that they're after. It all makes sense for me, and it makes sense for them. Now, it's still a little bit speculative because ultimately you could still get stuck with the house and they could just throw away their deposit, for example, if they wanted to. But ultimately, you're back to backing the deal, right? You're lining up the buyer before you have something to sell, right? And so it feels like that's a perfect world scenario for you. You've got this network of ready and willing buyers. You know what type of products they're after. You know the price ranges that they will typically buy at because they probably told you that when they become part of your network of buyers. So they've told you, look, I will take everything that you can source within this criteria. Then you go to the sellers and you say, I have got willing buyers for everything that fits this criteria. Do you got stuff that can fit this criteria? And if you do, I'm basically the matchmaker. I'm basically like a dating coach. I'm basically like Bumble for distribution, right? I'm hooking up the buyer and I'm hooking up the seller, and I'm the middleman, and I'm clipping a tiny bit of the ticket for the pleasure of orchestrating the deal. Is that kind of where you sit in this pantheon of responsibility?
I like the way you say that, actually. You know what? I've never even thought of it that way. The Bumble of distribution. You think this is great. Yeah, it's interesting. You definitely, especially when you're looking at closeout buyers specifically, they're willing and wanting just about any deal, right? They're like, show me any category, and I typically want to see 90% off of retail, 80 to 90% off of retail. My margins need to be somewhere between 40 and 60%. That's very easy for me to orchestrate the other side for, knowing that information. But then there is a different level on the buying groups as well, where you've got specific category managers and specific buyers at these bigger companies, and they're very specific about category, and they don't want to just see everything. And that, to your point, is where it becomes so important to build out that network and to constantly have what I like to say, there's an ask for every seat.
Yep.
So when that deal comes, right, they're already vetted. I've already talked to them. I know I already know their expectations. I already know what they want, the price point. So yeah, to your point exactly. Yes, that is specifically the Bumble of distribution.
I love it. I love it. We know what their profile looks like on either side of the table here, and we're trying to make a match here. Okay, cool. Now, how many of these buyers are, because you're looking at kind of the second tier mid-sized chains, for example, that have enough because it really comes down to distribution points, meaning what is their footprint? What is their retail footprint? What is their online footprint? Now, obviously, the likes of the Rosses of the world, they don't do online because they only do physical retail, because the inventory is so transient that they haven't really figured out a way yet to do the whole online thing and make it a treasure hunt. The Marshalls of the
Right.
world, etc. The off-price outlets, they really struggle with this whole digital retail thing, right? For lots of reasons, not just the transiency of their inventory. But I would imagine that many of these buyers, they want to either buy via EDI, they want to buy via punch out, they want to buy via direct self-service e-commerce. But I'm guessing that because of the transient nature of the inventory that you carry, that presents exactly the same kind of a challenge for you to service these buyers digitally as it is for them to service their end consumers digitally. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You actually touched on something that I find pretty interesting because we actually are starting to see a trend in the secondary market space where these bigger retailers, these chain big box stores are starting to sell more online. It's becoming more of their model. And a lot of them are starting to see a lot more success outside of just the stores. Because in my opinion, going in person to these stores, it's dying. It's not like it used to
And I can tell
be.
you, as
And
somebody that my wife drags me to these stores because she loves the Rosses of the world. She loves the Marshalls of. Whenever we go to the U.S., we have to go to a Ross while we're there. And
of
I can tell
course,
you, it is slightly soul destroying for a digital first guy like me to walk into these stores. And yes, there is the occasional needle in the haystack. I got the coolest look. We were just there not that long ago, less than a month ago. I went into a Ross and I got the coolest Miami Vice looking outfit with
love it.
the nice shirt, the nice knit short. Like, it was cool. It was a cool outfit. It was all of $20, something like that. It was nice. It was a nice brand. I can't even remember the brand, but it was nice. And I was like, yeah, but man, I had to waste like an hour of my life to find this. It would have probably been cheaper for me to jump online, pay the premium price through like a name brand retailer. Considering my hourly rate, it would probably be cheaper for me to buy this online and pay it full price than go into Ross and try to find this one thing that I like and fits me perfectly. But my wife was already there. She wasn't going to leave early. So I was like, oh, as long as I'm here, let me see if I can find something I like too. It does work. The model does work. But certainly we would buy more if we could shop online with those guys.
And I think that's what they're saying. And by the way, you're not wrong. Forbid we go to one of these outlets around here because my wife, we're just jumping everywhere. Then all of a sudden I'm buying all these things for myself.
Yeah.
And it just,
How did this happen? How did this happen?
thank you. How did this happen? Now so there is a lot of validity behind that. But no, you're certainly right. To start to transfer into that digital e-commerce world, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what some of these retailers are starting to see, despite Big Lots who just went out of business and they were pretty heavy online,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But so these things happen, but it is a trend and I do see it becoming more of the norm. So I think that's great. And really, that's on the other end, right? This is where now I have to worry about restrictions again because the digital footprint of these products, it changes a lot, right? And when these vendors don't want to see that product marketed or even a dollar or two less than what their core business, their core channels are selling for, it's disruptive. So yeah, that's definitely challenging. And it's just another piece of the puzzle to figure out.
And how about when you're selling to these guys? Do they have digital channel expectations of you? Do they expect to be able to buy via EDI? Do they expect to be able to transact via a punch out catalog that you're sending down to them that they can bring into their e-procurement system? Are they expecting to be able to log into a trade portal where they can see what you've got available and what the pricing is and maybe even bid on some of those things? It feels almost like you are starting to edge slowly into marketplace territory, wholesale marketplace territory, almost like maybe a fair or something like that, but with some pretty hardcore restrictions in place about who can buy what, when, and where from. and what channels they will promise it will go into and that you can validate after the fact.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I think of the white glove service that I'm looking to offer, as many steps that I can eliminate for these folks, the better. And the more exclusive it feels as well when I'm sending it directly to them and they're seeing this deal perfectly crafted for you. I think there's a lot of value in that. And that's been the approach traditionally and how we've gone about doing business so far. Now, what I will say though is some of our big expansion ideas and what the future really looks like is I really want to revolutionize the way that this industry operates as a whole. And this is what I will be pushing for here in the near future is actually creating a platform that is just so seamless. So it should have been there such a long time ago that we're able to connect the buyers and the sellers and take any sort of middleman out of it. And it honestly is going to replace myself and replace everybody else that is within this industry because we're going to make it so transparent, so easy that we already have the pool of buyers, everybody who is interested in the secondary market closeout product already within this system. And then there's just going to be this level of transparency between the vendors and the buyers. And it seamlessly uploads into this platform to then where it can just be skinned off and sent wherever it needs to be. And then within that, the logistics piece will also be integrated within this system. So it's going to be like an all-in-one platform of being able to dispose of product and get it into the hands of stores and then in turn into the hands of people. And that's really the vision of what you were circling around with that question.
So Jor for the secondary market is what you want to build.
I like it. I'm just going to start calling you for these branding ideas.
I love it. I love it. Now, how do you think that this, I'm surprised. And I always wondered when I walked into the Ross or when I was dragged kicking and screaming into the Ross, I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. I always wondered if and when and why somebody like a Ross, obviously they're trying to get a rock bottom dollar for everything they buy. In order for them to have a margin at the cutthroat prices that they retail at, they want to buy at the cheapest price they can to preserve their margin. It seems strange to me, and I'm sure you're going to tell me why this doesn't happen. It seems strange to me that somebody like a Nike or an Adidas or whoever it might be, and it sounds like you deal primarily in the fashion industry. It seems to me that it would be better and more efficient for the buyers on the Ross side of the fence to be dealing directly with a secondary market manager or team of managers within somebody like a Nike. It seems like it would be more efficient and more cost effective for somebody like Nike to own this themselves under the one roof because they're already dealing with a whole bunch of wholesale buyers anyway. They're dealing with the Walmarts of the world. They're dealing with the Foot Lockers of the world. So they know what that wholesale in and out. They've cut off their nose to spite their face a few times here. They cut off a lot of wholesale doors. And then they realized, oh, geez, this DTC thing didn't work out exactly as we expected. So we're gonna now start selling through Amazon again. We're gonna start selling to more retailers again. So they clearly understand the importance of the retail/wholesale market. But it doesn't seem that far-fetched to add and expand that team just a little bit to be able to deal directly with the secondary market. They've got the tooling, they got the tech, they got the fulfillment capabilities. They've got the warehouse locations. They've got all that capability. So what is the typical motivation of the vendor to deal with someone like you as a middleman or the 2 or 3 middlemen that sometimes get involved by the time it reaches the secondary retail market? What is their motivation for doing that versus doing it themselves?
So I also want to back up. You had mentioned that you think that I'm primarily into the fashion and apparel industry.
Yep.
It's actually, that's probably the least amount of what I do.
Wow.
Is the fashion piece.
Wow.
I would say the majority is the food and beverage, the home goods, the bedding, the goodness, look around headphones. Like it's actually most of the other things that are in the store,
Wow.
which is super interesting.
Wow.
But to go back to your question, you're absolutely right. And these brands do work directly with a lot of these retailers. What's super common. And that also goes back into the restrictions, right? So if I ask what are the restrictions, we're already talking to Dollar Tree and TJ Maxx and Ross. Stay away from these people. But it comes back to a few other things. It's one, they simply don't have the manpower or the time to really invest into that efforts of the business to continue to expand and grow on and where it's just not there. It's not moving the needle like expanding into these premium markets and into these online marketplaces are. Of course, they're trying to recoup so they don't lose money, but it's a different level of priority.
It's more of a break even model than it is, hey, how can we maximize margin model?
Yeah, exactly. Or at least recoup some sort of dollar on top of breaking even, right? We want to at least try to bring something back so it's not a loss on your books. So that's where it becomes quite interesting. And the other reason is they don't have so much product. It's almost hard to fathom. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. I worked with a company. They sent me 15 million units of chocolate bars and different pieces of candy. And it's okay. Internally, we need some extra help on this, right? This
I'm not going to be able to liquidate 15 million pieces of chocolate.
And what they commonly do is they donate it to write off,
Yeah.
or they'll try to put 250,000 units into one of these retailers, which is a lot of product, right?
Yeah.
But what about the other 14.5 million units, right? So that's where we can come in and really add the value, right? So where else can we take it that you aren't looking? And what stones have you not turned yet? And this is where our market expertise really comes into play. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it's not on a domestic level. You may have to export this, which also carries its restrictions, right? It's interesting, the model and where product goes and how to skin it correctly, because it does become a bit of a knot, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you just got to try and pick the knot. But yeah, that's where we come in, and that's where we are really able to add that value. And that's precisely why they just can't control that entire market. It's a lot.
It's a lot to swallow. I get it. And what, in terms of percentage of total sales, or maybe let's not even talk in dollar terms. Let's just talk in unit sales terms. How much of your product ends up going to the US versus a secondary market outside the United States? Is it that they're actually looking for you to find retail partners or other distribution or other wholesale partners outside of the US, and that's really something they don't want to deal with? And they don't want to deal with the customs, and they don't want to deal with the duties, and they don't want to deal with the regulations of food transport, for example, and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
How much are they relying on you to effectively develop international secondary markets for their goods?
It really depends on the customer and their problems. I would say majority of the business that we do is domestic.
Yep.
No doubt.
Yep.
However, there is instances, we've just recently had different lamps and sconces and whatever else, floor lamps, table lamps, chandeliers, and that product needed to go out of the US. So 100% of that product and winded up in South America.
Wow.
And then you have to worry about the different electricity.
Not only the plugs, but the voltage and everything else.
Everything, right? So it does become, you got to put some Canada, you got to put something, the UK, it really depends on the customer. And the majority of the units wind up in the States, because the other thing that you have to consider is what you had just mentioned on, and that is the shipping, right? And the customs and the weight and everything else. And that drives the price down, right? Really, it comes down to, are you looking for speed? Are you looking to recover money? Do you want to control where it goes? Because these things all play a factor into where the product can actually go into the marketplace. So it's like speed, price, and location. You can't have it all in this space, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish that I could give you the best price.
Yeah.
You get to pick where it goes, and I could do it right away. I wish I could do that, but it's not the reality.
Yeah.
So
It's the same.
That's
It's
where
the same with digital projects, right? Speed, price, quality. Pick any two.
pick any two. It's true.
You can't. Sorry, you can't pick all three. Sorry, you can't.
Just pick one.
Yeah, you could tell me the scope, or you could tell me what you can afford, but you can't tell me both. You can't tell me, okay, this is the scope of the project, but this is how much I can pay you. You can't dictate everything. No, that makes complete sense. And do you feel like, I guess what I'm asking is, what do you feel like is your biggest differentiator through competing players that are trying to get into these secondary markets and build these relationships and create these broad selling channels that can accept super high volumes. I know, for example, I think it was about 3 months ago, we had a gentleman on the pod. I can't actually remember the name of his company now, which is bad, but I've had 50 guests since then. But he was working exclusively in the exclusive luxury secondary markets. So that was all he worked in. And it was an interesting way that he got into the market. It was because he was initially a retailer, and then he was having a problem getting product. And so he ended up going into the secondary market for these super high-end luxury items. We're talking like Birkin bags, and we're talking like premium. He only works in the premium product space. And so he's not dealing with super high volumes. He's dealing with like premium product that can only be sold in very specific places. So he's dealing with a lot of the same challenges you're dealing with, but he doesn't have to swallow 15 million units of anything. There's never 15 million units of any Birkin bag. It just doesn't happen. So he never has to deal with the volume side of the business. He's dealing with the ultra premium side of the business with more restrictions. So how do you think that, do you feel like you're filling a completely unique gap, or do you have competitors in the market that have tried to do this and not done it very well?
I would say that as a majority, most partners, and there's some companies out there who do a really great job. They've been in the industry for 40, 50 years, specifically focusing on closeouts. And they do a great job. They've got a lot of relationships. But traditionally, and as a whole, this industry has been a mess. And it's time to clean it up, in my opinion. There's a lack of transparency. The product is not following the right restrictions, and they're not doing it quickly or efficiently. So I do feel that we are really unique in that way, where we are really transparent with the customer and the buyer, and creating this seamless paper trail rather, so they have full exposure of what's going on with their product, and they don't have to continuously hear about it for the next 5-6 months. It can be really quick based on the network that we built out. And we've also taken a super data-driven approach. So we use a lot of different tools and technologies, and we have some proprietary tools and technologies that we also use. And that has made us stand out quite significantly, utilizing things like intent data and being able to have cutting-edge technologies that really give us an edge into the marketplace that is so antiquated. Because when you look at this marketplace as a whole, I can't explain to you. It blows my mind how antiquated it is, because you got these guys and ladies who have been in the industry for 40, 50 years, and they're really good at taking John out to lunch and being buddies, but they don't have the edge that we do to be able to almost touch anybody on this planet. And that's really what separates us, is there isn't a company or a contact that we cannot get to. And that has given us quite the competitive advantage as far as finding new relationships, finding new buyers and new vendors.
The inevitable question, you knew I was going to ask this question, so I hope you were prepared for it. AI. Okay, AI this, AI that. Basically, you can't have a startup today unless you put AI in your name somewhere. I'm very surprised when I looked at your website. It's not Tradiant AI. I'm so surprised. I was shocked, frankly. Where does AI fit into your current and future plans? Because lots of businesses, and I'm exclusively focused on the manufacturing and distribution side of e-commerce. So I work in this every single day, and I have a lot of clients come to me and say, how do we leverage AI? How do we build AI into our business? And it's like, whoa, slow down there, Chief. You don't even do e-commerce yet. Let's put a plan in place for you to be able to crawl, walk, run into this thing. And let's get you up and running with a digital catalog. Let's do this in a measured way that's not going to completely destroy your business to where you have to rebuild it from scratch. Right. Let's double down on the things you do really right now. Let's maybe look at automating some of those things. Let's look at bringing some efficiencies to the game for you and your customers. And let's grow from there. Let's do some customer research. Let's find out what your customers actually want and need, because what you think they want and need through the lens of what's best for you might not be best for them. And so right. I guess my question for you is, how do you see AI? What is AI's role in your business today? And where do you see that directionally going over the next couple of years?
Yeah. So what is AI? I've never heard of it before.
Exactly. This AI thing.
Yeah, this AI bollocks. Yeah, the IA, is that what it's called?
Well, it is in Mexico. Inteligencia Artificial. So it's IA down in Mexico.
Oh, I love it. That's great. AI is going to play a big role, right? Right now, AI plays a big role in the ingesting and digesting of data,
Of course.
right? On an operational level, a lot of Tradiant is utilizing these AI tools every single day. Now, where I foresee this going is a few different pieces. And I think that as a whole, AI is going to work on simplicity for this specific industry. The simplicity of being able to digest the data and then also take the data of where product just like it has sold in the past and at what price points and be able to place it within that marketplace where, again, it goes back to this seamless integration where it's so easy because AI just is able to identify where the margins need to be, where it needs to make sense for the vendor, where it's need to make sense for the buyer, and what on a logistical level, what parts of the country does it need to be on? I think it's going to play a huge role in this. And then who knows when quantum computing and AI start to
Meld.
to mix, and maybe this just puts everybody out of a job, and I don't know, it's just this super bot that I really don't know.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, when you start looking 20, 30, 40 years from now, and where quantum computing and AI really are fully integrated and it's a normal part of our worlds, I definitely think that there I definitely think that's going to be a huge role, and what it looks like and where it goes is just far superior efficiency and the ability to take all of the data and processes all of that in real time and make really efficient decisions for both the customer and the buyer.
Could agree more. What is on your roadmap for the next 6, 12, 18 months? Is there anything your vendors or customers are looking for you to do that you don't yet do today that you say, look, we don't do that today, but come back and talk to me in 6 months and we will be? What's like high on your priority list?
I'll tell you what, I don't want to call it a marketplace because we are in such early stages of what this is going to look like. But for simplistic terms, I'll call it the marketplace. It's going to be a lot more private than that. It's not going to be your Amazon. But this program that I'm going to build, which will also be integrated with AI, is going to be the most exciting thing in being able to seamlessly connect the vendor with the buyer and have full transparency and really just mitigating all of the risk, the brand exposure. They're not going to get gouged on price anymore because it hasn't been flipped 5 times before it gets to the end user. I think that the industry needs something like this. And I think that the buyers are so thirsty for it. And I think that the vendors are starving for it. So I think that's what's going to make the most sense. And that's what we'll begin working on, building something that's ultimately great.
Yeah, look, this is something that I'm seeing really become the norm in wholesale distribution across many industries now. Is okay, cool. We manufacture 10% of our catalog. We distribute 70% of our catalog, meaning we warehouse it, we ship it, we own it. And then this other 20%, we're going to be a marketplace for 20% of our SKUs where we don't touch it. We don't have to take photos of it. We don't have to know the specs of it. We don't even have to know the selling price of it. That's going to be the vendor's job. They're going to upload that into our portal. We're going to create the marketplace engine for that to happen. Whether they're leveraging Miracle or whether they're leveraging something else in the back end doesn't really matter. And that 20% of our catalog that, it would take us a year to onboard because we're so far behind in being able to onboard products into our catalog and get photos and merchandising and pricing and all that sort of stuff and getting it warehoused and even getting it requisitioned, that we're just going to open that 20% of our catalog or a growing portion of our catalog up to vendors and they manage it themselves. And we set the commission we're going to charge for every sale that goes through our platform. We're effectively just going to be the matchmaker between the buyer and the seller, and we're going to clip the ticket for the pleasure. So I'm definitely seeing this become much more common, expected, and not just accepted, but expected in the distribution space because it's hard when a distributor has 4 million SKUs, right? It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And only 50% of those SKUs are fast moving, right? So then they're going, what do I do with those other 2 million SKUs? I want to carry them because I don't just want to sell SKUs. I want to sell solutions. So I want to sell the whole package of solutions into the market. But it's really difficult if I have to onboard it into my ERP, if I have to onboard it into my PIM system, if I have to onboard it into my warehouse network, if I have to tie up capital on those additional 2 million SKUs, that's hard work, right? That's a capital intensive operation especially for the bottom half of my catalog that doesn't move at the rate that the top half of my catalog does. And so
Right.
moving to a marketplace model for at least part of the catalog makes a lot of sense for a lot of major distributors, and it's becoming a normal approach to the market. And so it does make sense to me that you would want to, the closer you can get to a pure marketplace, the better you will be in terms of cash conversion cycles. That's the reality, right? Because if you move towards a marketplace model, you simply will not have capital tied up in inventory. It's that simple.
Yeah.
The vendor owns the inventory until it gets bought and until it gets shipped. And also from a logistical perspective, again, it reduces costs for everybody because it doesn't have to sit in your warehouse anymore. It gets shipped direct.
Yeah. And and that profit just is all on the table for the vendor and for the buyer. And I think that's ultimately the expectation from both of these brands to begin with. So where it starts to get messy is, unfortunately, the tainted wholesalers.
Yeah, the poor distributors caught in the middle, the meat in the sandwich.
Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely right though. So
I love
very
it.
interesting.
I love it.
See this going. Just
Look, I think most of the major manufacturers that you would be dealing with, they already have a digital catalog anyway. They have to. So for their mainstream distributors that are selling into mainstream retail, for example, or even if they're selling direct into their largest direct retail accounts, they will have a product feed, right? So they've already got that. And so the reality is for them to basically just make you one more destination for that product feed and to set unique pricing rules for you as a channel, that's pretty easy for the majors to do because they already have to do that anyway for the rest of the market. So I see a world where the major vendors already can facilitate this for you. It's the technology that you will need to have sitting in the middle to both receive that data and then obviously surface it to your customers with the correct restrictions. And those are really just attributes of the product anyway.
Yeah.
That's really
Right.
what they are. Those restrictions are just, there's something that you can turn into structured data attributes anyway. And then obviously there has to be a commitment on the buy side, but regardless of whether they're buying through a marketplace, which is you, or whether they're buying through a white glove introductory service through you, there's still an element of trust involved either way. You still have to believe that if they tell you, I'm not going to sell in my stores in this region because the vendor doesn't want me to, there's still an element of trust involved because you're not literally there in their warehouse seeing which retail store they're ultimately dispatched to, and you're not sitting at the till tracking the scanning of every one of these barcodes as it goes out the door. So the reality is that no matter how much trust you try to build, you still have to have a certain element of trust in the buyer that they're going to do and abide by the rules that you've set or what the vendor ultimately has set. I think it's going to be hard. IoT will make this easier, right? IoT tracking dots are going to make this easier. The wholesale replacement of barcodes with QR codes is going to make this easier. There's lots of things in the supply chain that are going to be dramatically changed over the next 5 to 10 years that are going to make the wholesale tracking and even the blockchainification of product it's going to come. Obviously, Web3 got a major, it just got disrupted, right? The whole NFT scam, the whole crypto scams, all that stuff, it derailed Web3. It probably set the adoption of Web3 back by a decade if I just had to finger in the air, take a guess at how long the market was set back. But the reality is there was a lot of things about Web3 that had very practical applications to supply chain and digital twins and all that stuff, like very exciting stuff. But it got all lumped in with this whole BS side of Web3, and so it all got shelved. But I think that is going to start to pick back up again, especially as America takes a very liberal approach to crypto, takes a very liberal approach to blockchain. The reality is Sachs has done a great job at advocating for blockchain through President Trump, and obviously for a lot of the bills that they're passing now to liberalize use of blockchain and crypto technologies. Look, I have confidence that supply chain visibility is going to get a lot better, right? I'm already starting to see it in the industries that I work in, even to the point where a lot of distributors are sending their suppliers an inventory feed on the daily and then just setting min maxes in there and saying, hey, look, when we send you a product feed, when our level drops below this, just send us 20 more units. So that's auto replenishment in the B2B world. It's not like a subscription model. It's more like an auto replenishment model. And we're already starting to see that. We're starting to see supply chain transparency being a differentiating factor for the brands that win and the brands that lose. So oftentimes historically in B2B, we've wanted to hold that information really close to our chest. But if we want to get the right product into the right markets and into the right locations with the right timing without having to hold a lot of excess inventory, it requires supply chain transparency. All the way from the retailer to the distributor or wholesaler, all the way to the manufacturer. And I'm starting to see a whole lot more embracing of that reality now than I did even 2 years ago. And that to me is very exciting. And I think it's going to impact your industry a lot too.
I couldn't agree more. I think you just nailed it right on the nail there, because I foresee the same thing. And I guess, you know what, the more that you sit there and think about it and look at it, you go, yeah, you're right. There is a lot more tracking that's going on. Now, I am curious with that auto replenishment piece, what that same sort of model and function will look like, especially in this closeout space. That excites me.
Yeah.
So, because it's very different, right? It's like, instead of working on, hey, we don't have enough inventory, hey, we have too much inventory, right? And is there auto deplenishment rather than a replenishment? I do think, because when you look at a lot of these brands and a lot of these manufacturers and some distributors, it's a revolving door product. There's constantly product that is going out of date. It's short dated. It's rebrands are happening. There's always some change going on. There's always a cancel order. It's a revolving door, right?
Longshoremen are striking, and then the stuff can't go out to market in time. And then they're going, now we just got to close this product out because we can't sell it through the major chains anymore.
Yeah. So, and then what do you do? But it's precisely that. So it's interesting to see what that'll look like, how that'll play a factor, especially in this space. But I'm very optimistic about it as well. And I think it could play a big piece into what we do.
Yeah.
You know,
there's no question about that. And I think that we'll take this offline, because I could talk about this for hours more, but I got a lot of ideas that I think will be of interest, mutual interest to us. So let's definitely take that bit offline. But if you could change anything about your industry with the snap of your fingers, without having to do any work yourself, what would it be?
What a great question. The biggest thing is the lack of honesty and integrity within this industry. It screams louder than anything else. One of the most horrifying things I've ever seen, and this is what has also put so much passion into what I'm doing and how I want to make us different. It's why it's a pillar that we stand on, is there is a lack of transparency, honesty, and integrity. And I wish I could flip that switch, and everybody would benefit from that specifically changing.
In other words, going from an industry of used car salesmen to instead being more, I'm trying to think of an industry that is super, super trusted. There's not that many industries that are super trusted. So I like the fact that you try to change that, especially in your industry, which is, it's cutthroat, right? It's cutthroat margins, it's cutthroat deals, it's last minute deals, it's overstocks. It's a situation where things are boiled down to the component parts real fast, and brand all of a sudden just doesn't carry the weight that it does in traditional retail markets. So I totally get that. Now, sorry, you go ahead. I think I cut you off.
I was just going to say, there's so much fluff, right? You were just talking about it. There's all of these, it's cutthroat, but I think it's important that we focus on what are going to make the impacts. And when I think of the word impact, what's going to move that needle, and focusing on the pieces that matter to the vendor, to the buyer, and to the marketplace, and what we can all actually benefit from, reducing that waste out there, making sure we're giving people the opportunity to get product that they wouldn't necessarily be able to otherwise. I think those are the pieces that are going to make the biggest impact. And I think that's what we should be focusing on here at Tradiant.
I believe it. I'm on board. I'm a fan. Look, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll drop a link to your website in the show notes. Other than that, if people want to get a hold of you and better understand the secondary market for retail products, what's the best way to reach out to you and have a chat?
The best ways, I am one of those guys who is constantly at my phone, my computer. I got email on there. So my phone number, 303-817-2015. Make sure to go to the website, www.gotradiant. It's radiant, but with a T.com. You can find my information there, or just reach out to parker@gotradiant.com. That'll be my email, and you can get me there. And I'm always available for you, and you can pretty much call me anytime, because I will more than likely answer the phone.
I love it. I love it. About the only time I don't answer my phone is when I'm recording a podcast. So no, I'm on board with that. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, and it's been a fantastic chat, and I appreciate your time. This is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. So, Mr. Parker Williams from Tradiant, what is your question for me today?
What a great opportunity. I like this. We're flipping this.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. If you had one piece of advice that you can give to the new generation of entrepreneurs who are looking to get into this industry, what would you say?
Brilliant. I love that. Look, the older I've gotten, and look, I still think of myself as a young guy, but I'm not. I turned 51. I turned 50. I turned 51 on Halloween, so I'm not a young guy anymore. But I still feel young. My wife is considerably younger than me, so that helps. She helps to keep me young, which is great. And don't have kids, so the reality is that my dogs are my kids. And I was taught from a very young age that you don't have to, and it's oftentimes not in your best interest to do things the traditional way, to do things like the rest of the world says they have to be done. And a lot of my successes are directly attributable to the fact that I never really followed the rules. And I didn't meet my wife until I was 42 years old. And I'd never been married before. I'd never obviously had kids before. And so the reality is I never did things the traditional way, all the way from moving to Southern California, which everybody says, well, you got to be nuts to move away from Southern. You got to be nuts to leave Southern California in your early 20s. How stupid can you be? Like, why did you leave? Moving to New Zealand. Then after 28 years in New Zealand, people say, oh, it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Why would you ever want to leave New Zealand? Moving to Mexico, pivoting just over 5 years ago, completely pivoting my entire career to solely focus on B2B e-commerce because I saw that's where the entire industry was going after 20 years in the industry. And the first half of my career being really heavily focused on retail e-commerce. And I've just had to follow my heart, follow my dreams, but there's been a method to my madness all the way along. And this is the advice. I've always tried to solve for peace first and money second, meaning what is going to bring the most peace, the most joy, the most fulfillment, the most freedom to my life. How can I solve for that? And if I solve for that, I'll have so much joy in what I'm doing that the money will follow. Like I never made money the first and top and only priority. And trust me, I know a lot of people that did, and they solved for that, but then they lost everything else. They lost the peace. They lost the joy. They lost the fulfillment. They lost their relationships. And when that became the number one priority, kind of a lot of things suffer, right? And I hopefully am an example of someone that solved for peace first, solved for freedom first, both location freedom, financial freedom, never went into debt. I have a paranoid aversion to debt. I think if you solve for those other parts of your life that make you a complete human being, if you solve for those things first, the money will come. I promise you that. Because the level of grit it takes to be an entrepreneur, if you don't actually, you won't love it 100% of the time. There's always going to be things, like there's things I've got to do every single day that I don't love, right? But on balance, like I enjoy 90+% of every single thing I do related to work. And I still get up just as excited today to do what I do as I did 25 years ago. So I think that's a pretty good thing to aim for. And I think that people, and I see it a lot, and I mentioned it on a podcast recently, I think this has a lot to answer for. Yeah. And I'll tell you why I think that, not in all the ways that most people think. I think that this has created a world of instant gratification on almost every level. So I can see content that I want to see. I can watch it on demand. I can order Uber Eats on demand and get anything I want from anywhere within 10 minutes. I can shop on Amazon. Just the level of instant gratification that this entails 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I'm as guilty as anyone. This phone is literally within a meter of my body, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I just think that we now transpose that same model of instant gratification to business and personal success. And we say, if I can get Uber Eats in 10 minutes, why can't I be successful in 10 minutes? And it's just that connection that our brain makes, right? And so we have such high expectations of success now that it's not congruent with the reality of the grit that it takes over a sustained period. I've been building my personal brand for a decade, like putting out content at scale for a decade. Now, I don't have to do any outbound marketing now. I keep my pipeline full just through my personal brand, content, relationships, referrals, all that sort of stuff. So it's paid dividends, but it's not as if it came fast, right? I had to put sustained effort in, and I continue to put sustained effort in long after most people give up. Nearly 600 podcast episodes later, I'm still putting in the work. So I think that people just have an instant gratification mentality because most other things in their life can come instantly. But success in business rarely comes instantly. And that's the thing that I would like to just transpose out of my mind into young entrepreneurs out there is just, man, it's a long game. Unless you're planning to die tomorrow, you got decades to figure this thing out. Enjoy the freaking ride because it is amazing.
Profound. Wow.
I know that sounded a little preachy, but I'll take it.
I'll take that any day of the week. Are you kidding me? I'll tell you that.
I love it. I love it. It was super cool chatting with you. I'm super proud of what you've achieved already. I wish you every success with Tradiant. I appreciate your time. Can't wait to speak to you again soon, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And hey, happy early birthday. Since we got Halloween coming up, happy early birthday. And I can't thank you enough. So
appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.